He wasn't just a soldier. He was the kind of name that resonated through halls of strategy and war, from dusty outposts on Europa to deep space citadels orbiting dying stars. Admiral Elias Rhane, the man who turned hopeless last stands into legends, who once stared down a rogue planetary AI uprising and convinced it to stand down without firing a shot. He didn't just fight wars. He ended them. And in peacetime, he spoke for humanity when no one else dared approach the volatile frontiers of the Galactic Empire. That's why they sent him, because even the Empire understood the weight his presence carried, until they decided to challenge it. The planet Arx Primaris was supposed to be neutral ground, a location both sides agreed upon for opening trade routes and revisiting long-buried treaties. Cameras were there, observers, witnesses. The transmission went out across the quadrant. One moment he was stepping forward, extending a hand. The next, a plasma lance pierced his chest, clean, deliberate, sanctioned. The Empire's ambassador didn't flinch. The guards didn't act. It wasn't a rogue element. It was a message. Across human space, silence dropped like a hammer. The transmission cut off. News anchors froze mid-sentence. Millions saw it live. Billions watched the replay. No one spoke of retaliation. No demands were issued. Earth didn't respond. The unified colonies offered no press statement. But every military server went encrypted. Civilian networks slowed to a crawl. Above Mars, the Aegis Defense Network went dark. Maintenance, they claimed. Old veterans began receiving cryptic recall messages, flagged Omega Black. Shipyards closed to the public. The stock markets held their breath. And somewhere deep beneath the Pacific, the AI that once slumbered since the Orion Wars reawakened and asked only one question. Who fired first? 15 minutes. That's all it took for humanity's silence to become deafening. Not a second of shouting. No protests. No threats. But across the Empire's territories, probes began vanishing from deep orbit. Trade lanes detected gravitational irregularities. One by one, black sites embedded near border worlds lit up and then vanished from scans. Empire analysts brushed it off as sensor ghosts. Coincidence. They laughed in their war rooms, assuming the humans were stunned, paralyzed, unwilling to act without committee debate. They had no idea that silence was the warhead. Those who truly knew Admiral Rhane understood this wasn't just about vengeance. This was legacy. The man had mentored half the current generation of military commanders. His philosophies shaped the defense doctrine of 2197. His writings were required reading in every human academy across the systems. To kill him was not just a political misstep. It was a spiritual assault on a civilization that remembered every name on its war memorials. Humanity never deified soldiers. They remembered them deeply, and they repaid blood with calculation. Within those same 15 minutes, quantum-linked command lines lit up in absolute synchronization. No shouting, no panic, just activation. Across asteroid belts and nebulae, stealth flotillas began turning. No orders needed. They'd trained for this. Red Zero protocols launched from hidden bunkers untouched since Earth's last global war. Automated logistics platforms initiated supply duplication. Civilian freight ships with hidden cores rerouted themselves like migrating predators. Everything was in motion. Yet, not a single public figure said a word. Back on Arx Primaris, the Empire gloated. The footage was circulated with commentary implying human weakness. They cannot fight without consensus, one anchor said. Their hero is ash, and they bury themselves in silence. An admiral within the Empire's high navy proposed tightening border patrols. Another dismissed it, stating Earth wouldn't jeopardize peace over one man. But some weren't so sure. A handful of analysts noticed patterns, docking manifests disappearing, rogue signal bursts echoing from old relay stations. The pieces didn't connect yet. They had too much faith in their superiority, too much reliance on outdated beliefs. Humanity had changed. The wars of the past hardened them, yes, but they also learned something critical. Emotion is a delay. Rage is inefficient. Mourning could wait. And in place of impulsive revenge, they installed mechanisms. Protocols written not in anger, but in resolve. What began during Rhane's time continued without him. He taught them to prepare not for the war you want, but the war they'll force you into. They didn't scream. They didn't march. They encircled. And in those 15 minutes, the Empire had no idea it had already lost the ability to choose how the story would end. The 15th minute passed. Across Empire Command, nothing seemed out of place. No retaliation, no diplomatic transmission, no shift in fleet posture. They mistook it for hesitation. Arrogance masked the slow realization crawling through their ranks. In truth, humanity had moved faster than any empire could perceive. Every second of that silence had been a signal, every breath a calculated move. Entire strike groups were already repositioned, cloaked, dormant, but awake. They hadn't launched an attack. They had activated a conclusion. In the central intelligence grid of a unified human command, the order was issued in just 2 words: Phase Blue, a phrase known only to the highest echelon. No war declaration, no rallying speech, no visible changes. But deep inside the quantum command lattice, thousands of dormant war algorithms came online, each already trained to act in milliseconds across trillions of permutations. Hundreds of AI tacticians cross-referenced 20 years of Empire fleet maneuvers and logistics. Not to theorize war, to end it. On Luna's far side, autonomous shipyards began diverting hidden reserves. Constructs without names, without lights, without noise. Stationed at the edge of forgotten wormholes, old hunter-killer fleets received route updates hard-coded since the end of the Orion conflict. They didn't require commands. They responded to loss. The war hero's death wasn't a moment of rage. It was a triggering condition. Across the scattered human colonies, people noticed small things. Military leave was suspended. Civilian traffic rerouted. Mining convoys suddenly recalled. Encryption updates pushed across systems, including those untouched for years. Coordinated silence gripped every level of human civilization, and that silence was not passive. It was surgical. Even rebel cells long at odds with Earth's centralized order received Black Channel messages. No words, just coordinates. Every faction knew what it meant. The Unified Naval Command, a structure thought bureaucratic and slow by Empire analysts, was already executing its most dangerous maneuver. A silent encirclement doctrine once theorized, but never tested. Operation Perimeter. It required the precise movement of over 7,000 assets within a 90-second margin of error, covering regions spanning 6 spiral arms. No Empire sensor caught it. Not because it was too stealthy, because it was already too close. Within Empire intelligence circles, confusion emerged. Monitoring stations showed sudden data inconsistencies, anomalous readings in deep space gravity wells, unusual subspace interference patterns. Analysts dismissed it as cosmic noise. One flagged a synchronized set of fluctuations on a galactic rim. 53 locations blinked in unison. He raised it to his superior. It was ignored. Humans don't move that fast, they said. They believed their projections still held value. But the moment they killed Rhane, those projections became obsolete. On Earth, a single encrypted burst was sent from the Citadel of Nations. It wasn't to declare war. It was to activate buried nodes spread across alien space. Humans embedded in every major empire system, posing as traders, engineers, translators. Not spies. Listeners. They were never meant to sabotage. They were the switch. One such agent, posted on the Empire's industrial world of Carowin, watched the sun rise as his communication implant lit up. No words, no instructions, just a pulsing blue dot. He stood, walked into the refinery's control room, and activated a dormant command string in the maintenance systems. The primary defense array rerouted power for a systems check, leaving it blind for exactly 19 minutes. That was enough. Across the stars, hundreds like him did the same. No force had moved, no weapons fired. But the Empire's core systems were now open, vulnerable, exposed from the inside. They didn't know it yet, but the gates were down. Human precision wasn't built to overwhelm through chaos. It was built to collapse empires through pressure points. That was Rhane's doctrine. Strength through patience. Power through position. 15 minutes had been enough. Not to prepare a response, but to finish one. The fleets didn't launch. They were already there. The traps didn't require building. They were already built. All humanity needed was the excuse. And the Empire had given it willingly, live on every broadcast in the quadrant. The last internal communication sent from Earth that day was logged in one forgotten backup server, marked with Rhane's old tactical signature. It read, "Status surrounded." It was not a boast. It was a statement of fact, and the Empire hadn't yet noticed the walls had closed in around them. Not with fire, but with silence sharper than any blade. Within the next hour, the illusion of Empire dominance cracked. In sectors once patrolled with impunity, sensors failed to relay fleet positions. Star charts flickered with phantom contacts. Orbital defense rings reported unknown gravitational shifts, unaccounted micropulse echoes, and temporal noise that had no precedent in their data archives. They weren't seeing attacks. They were seeing shadows, strategic, placed with purpose. Something invisible was moving, and it wasn't running. It was surrounding. At 2:41 Empire Standard Time, a logistics relay in Sector 12 went dark for 9 seconds. When it came back online, 6 of its supply routes had been rerouted without authorization. The backups failed to initiate. Security protocols didn't trigger. On every screen, only one message appeared: connection rerouted. Await directive. The Empire's military didn't understand it then. They believed it was an internal malfunction. But those routes were already in human control, hijacked not with brute force, but with absolute precision. They hadn't been hacked. They had been waiting for permission to act. In the Imperial core, data centers showed false positive fleet logs, fabricated by dormant algorithms planted years prior. Empire deployments began to crumble internally. Dozens of key sectors redirected firepower to phantom coordinates. Entire reserve fleets moved away from vital systems, unknowingly abandoning real positions. Human fleet command didn't need to fight to win. They had just altered reality, and the Empire's own infrastructure was helping them do it. The humans never arrived. They had always been there, embedded in asteroid fields disguised as mining drones, hidden inside outdated trade beacons no longer monitored, stationed beyond deep space comets whose orbits hadn't been recalculated in decades. For years, they'd moved pieces quietly, building a noose the Empire never saw, until it was already drawn tight. Civilian chatter in Empire worlds picked up rumors. Cargo ships turned away by invisible signals. Navigation systems refusing to enter certain sectors. Traders whispered of dead space pockets where comms died instantly. Some tried to enter. None returned. Fear didn't come from battle. It came from the absence of resistance. That something so vast could happen without noise. That humanity hadn't declared war. Not because they wouldn't, but because war had already been decided without them. Empire leadership convened in emergency. Arguments flared. Reports conflicted. Every official insisted they still held military superiority. But none could explain the growing silence between worlds. Entire systems stopped responding, not because they were attacked, but because their communication lines now looped back into human-controlled relays. Those systems weren't destroyed. They were muted. Some tried to fight back. Minor skirmishes occurred where Empire patrols engaged what they believed were pirate vessels. They were wrong. Every skirmish lasted seconds. No return fire. Only suppression. Ships disabled. Crews left stranded in orbit. Minimal casualties. It wasn't retaliation. It was control. Humans weren't interested in destruction. They were showing dominance without death. A demonstration. Planetary defense networks failed in synchronized waves. AI cores locked behind layered encryption keys began to recite lines from Earth's military doctrines. Lines written by Rhane himself. His voice, used as activation codes, echoed in the corridors of Empire data centers. No threats, just doctrine played back to those who killed him. The message wasn't revenge. It was certainty. By 6 o'clock, 1/3 of Empire territory was tactically isolated. Not a shot fired in anger. No cities destroyed. No fleets lost. Yet, power grids flickered. Supply routes dried. Military orders stopped reaching units. The Empire had not been invaded. It had been silenced from within and surrounded from without. Satellites failed to detect the position of key command ships because those ships had already been magnetically tethered in dead zones. No fuel, no thrust. Alive but paralyzed. The galaxy began to take notice. Border civilizations, once fearful of the Empire, found their own skirmish zones suddenly cleared. Pirate activity ceased. Communications lines opened. Everywhere the Empire withdrew or lost contact, humanity's influence spread, not by colonization, but by presence. Unspoken, unchallenged. Humanity didn't launch a fleet. It became the walls around the Empire. The stars that once looked free now belonged to them, not through conquest, but through inevitability. It was the doctrine Rhane left behind. War without waste, control without chaos, presence without permission. By the end of the day, the only Empire system still fully operational was its capital. It stood alone, ringed by quiet stars. No official reports came in. Their outer worlds gave no answers. Their ships returned nothing but silence. Around them, unseen but known, was a force too vast to measure and too patient to explain itself. Humanity had encircled an empire not to crush it, but to leave it aware of the consequences it chose. And the message was clear: we are not here to fight. We are here to be remembered. On the second day, the Empire's capital sent out a message to humanity. It was wrapped in diplomatic phrasing, masked under calls for investigation and mutual understanding. A carefully crafted piece of political theater meant to control narrative, to reframe the assassination of Admiral Rhane as a misunderstanding. No acknowledgement, no apology, just deflection. It never reached its destination. The message was intercepted, rerouted back to the capital, and displayed on every local screen with a single annotation above it. Received. Denied. The Empire's propaganda machine tried to spin it as an error, but their citizens had already begun to ask the question their leaders feared. Why are we isolated? Inside the capital's military command, panic finally broke through arrogance. Generals demanded fleet regrouping, but their orders moved slower than the collapse already unfolding. Communications between sectors had degraded into static, and couriers sent through wormholes never emerged on the other side. Every tactical simulation failed to account for the level of prepositioned human presence, now choking their logistics. The command staff still didn't understand. They believed they were preparing for war, but they had already lost control of movement, of coordination, of reach. The fight wasn't coming. The fight had been removed as an option. Inside one of the central fleet control cores, a defense technician discovered a silent data burst embedded in their navigational AI, an old archive labeled under humanitarian aid protocols. When decrypted, it revealed only one message, embedded like a seed years ago. Rhane protocol. If silenced, let them hear. Audio followed. Not a threat, not a demand, just the voice of Admiral Rhane, recorded during a lecture at the Seoul Command Academy. He spoke not of warfare, but of restraint, of preparing for the day humanity would have to teach others the cost of arrogance, without becoming what they opposed. That recording played on loop through the Empire's defense system until it was forced shut manually. By the third day, Empire senators started evacuating in secret. They saw what the High Command refused to admit. Human fleets hadn't declared war. They had delivered judgment. Their silence was not hesitation. It was the verdict. Empire trading hubs found themselves walled off by blank zones, where no starships entered and none exited. No sabotage, no debris, just routes gone dark. Inside the Empire, economy halted. Shipyards ran out of parts. Civil unrest bloomed in the absence of food shipments. Blackouts spread across population centers. And still, no missiles launched, no invasions, just precise erasure of Empire reach. Elsewhere in the galaxy, the balance shifted. Border species, long under Empire subjugation, found themselves suddenly freed. Not by revolution, by absence. Empire enforcement fleets simply ceased to respond. Pirate factions that once preyed on Outer Rim colonies disappeared without a trace. Those colonies protected now by silent human patrols that never announced themselves. Aid arrived before requests were sent. Medical supplies dropped without origin. Humanity wasn't building allies. They were rewriting the map through action. In a final act of desperation, the Empire's High Council broadcasted a universal message. Not to negotiate, but to plead. They spoke of misunderstanding, of human overreaction, of the need to return to diplomacy. They invoked ancient treaties, long-forgotten alliances, and memories of shared battles against greater threats. It was the longest uninterrupted transmission in their history. When it ended, silence followed. 3 hours later, a return signal arrived. Only one line. No flourish. No emblem. Just data. The exact time, location, and planetary coordinates where Admiral Elias Rhane's body had fallen. Transmitted back to the Empire with a digital tag. Final marker. Position logged. Conflict resolved. It wasn't a threat. It was the closing of a file. The galaxy now understood something they never had before. Humanity did not seek conquest. It didn't operate on vengeance. It operated on a deeper code, one that didn't demand recognition but made defiance impossible. Not through brutality, through absolute, unshakable resolve. And when provoked past reason, when silence became humanity's only language, entire civilizations learned that conflict with them didn't ignite wars. It ended influence. The Empire never officially surrendered, but no longer ruled. Its systems remained intact, but its authority vanished. Its fleets drifted, fueled but aimless. Its voice, once feared, now ignored. All because it killed a man who believed in restraint more than victory. A man who didn't need to lead armies from the front, because he'd already taught them everything they needed. Elias Rhane was gone. But in response, humanity showed the galaxy it no longer needed monuments, no longer needed speeches. It needed only time. 15 minutes, to be exact. That was all it took to turn the greatest power in the quadrant into a name remembered not for its reach, but for its mistake.